पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Friends, in this webinar, we are going to take a bird's eye view of one of the most well-known Upanishads, namely Ishavasya Upanishad. These 18 mantras in this Upanishad can probably be looked at in different ways by different teachers. For now, I would like to consider these 18 as falling in 5 groups. In the first group, I would put just one mantra, that is mantra number 2. For that is the mantra which appeals to vast majority of all of us. The second mantra says, if we live an active life and we exert towards such actions which have no selfish motive, that will be a great blessing, and we must desire to spend all our life in that way. There is a hope, there is an aspiration. May we live 100 years working selflessly. Most of you have heard a statement by Swami Vivekananda, who said, those who live for others alone live. Those who live for themselves do not live at all. That was a wonderful echo of this second mantra. The second mantra, Kurvanneveha karmani jijivishe chatagam samaha evam tvai nanyathe tosti na karma lipyate nare, is the basis for Lord Sri Krishna's Karma Yoga in the Gita, whereupon Sri Krishna gives a lot of elaboration. The seed for that 100 verses in Bhagavad Gita, giving us facets of Karma Yoga, the seed is here in the second mantra of the Ishavasya Upanishad. I would especially highlight the last quarter of the second mantra, Na karma lipyate nare. When we live with service-mindedness, na lipyate, lepaha na bhavati. Our work, our actions do not bind us. Lord Krishna, in the 10th verse of the 5th chapter of the Gita, gives us the example of the lotus leaf, which, in spite of being in the midst of water, in spite of water drops falling upon it, does not get wet. Brahmanyadhaya karmani sangam tyaktva karoti yaha lipyate nasapapena padmapatramivambhasa. Please see, lipyate na lipyate. The two words are common in the second mantra of Ishavasya and the 10th shloka of chapter 5 Bhagavad Gita. Karma Yoga is that skill that kaushalam by which you and I can work day and night. Quantity doesn't matter. You and I can be active. We can buy, we can sell, we can save, we can travel, we can do 100 things. We can marry, we can have children, we can have various kinds of social relationships. As long as there is no selfishness in us, this relating, working, earning, spending, etc., do not bind us. No wonder Mahatma Gandhi, Vinoba Bhave, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and many others who were active in social work found Ishavasya Upanishad very inspiring. Even today in Gandhi ashrams, in Vinoba's ashrams, they recite above all this Ishavasya Upanishads, 18 mantras. In the second group, I have 7 mantras. The first group, highlighting selfless action, had just one mantra. The second group, having pointers to liberation, has 7 mantras. And the very first mantra out of the 18 belongs to this second group. Isha sarvam yatkincha jagathyam jagat tena tyaktena bhunjitha magridah kasya svidhanam. Mahatma Gandhi went to the extent of saying that if all Hindu scriptures were burnt, turned to ashes, and Ishavasya Upanishad remained, that would be enough to revive Hinduism. And he went a step further. Even in the Ishavasya Upanishad, if the first mantra were to remain, that is enough to revive, bring new life to the whole philosophical system of Hinduism. What made him give such compliments to the first mantra? Because the first mantra says, see God everywhere. See God in the lowest categories of the society. See God in those who are poor, who are weak, who may be exploited. Mahatma Gandhi, in a manner of saying, was very concerned with change in society, change in the character of every human being. It would not be incorrect to say, though some of you may take this with a grain of salt, it would not be incorrect to say that Mahatma Gandhi did not care much for the metaphysics of Sanatana Dharma, Atmajnana, Brahmajnana, liberation, and so on. Nor did he care much for various orthodox customs and systems and rules and so on. He was concerned with every human being becoming noble, becoming selfless. He was concerned with humanity learning to live together in harmony, in peace, and so on. Therefore, even this first mantra, which I put in the second category of Brahmajnana, Brahmavidya, to someone like Mahatma Gandhi meant seeing God in everyone without caring for liberation as such. So the mantra says, think of everything as being pervaded by God, and everything belongs to God, and abandon, let go of your greed. Even when you have something, please know you are not the owner, you are only a trustee at best. He said to rich people like Birlas, look at yourselves as trustees. God has entrusted all this wealth, all these resources to you. Do not think they are literally yours. In your heart, know yourself to be trustees, outwardly, of course, as the law of the land requires, as social systems require. Yes, you are the owner. Please, after reading Ishavasya Upanishad, do not close your bank account and do not say, I am no more signatory to anything and I am only a trustee and I don't own anything. You will land in trouble. You must have a certain common sense, but in heart of hearts, you must know yes, the higher truth is it is all God's. Tomorrow, if He wants to take it away, He will, and I cannot do anything about it. So, that kind of spirit. What are the other six mantras which I have put in this second group? In fact, the second group has the third mantra which goes Asuryanamate lokaha andhitamasapurva taganste pretyabhigachanti yeke chatmahano janaha. It should suffice to highlight the last quarter. Ye cha atmahano janaha. He says, or the Rishi of this Upanishad, we don't know the name of the Rishi. The Rishi says, those who in this human life do not aspire for knowing their true nature, no matter how successful they are in other respects, are in fact committing a suicide. Atmahanaha means they are killing themselves, they are destroying themselves, they are letting themselves down. So, friends, all of us have various duties and responsibilities, no doubt, but earlier the better. We must raise the deeper questions of life and grapple with them. Who am I? What's my true nature? If you don't like the language of Jnana Marga, go for it in the Bhakti way. Constantly try to think of yourself as an instrument in God's hands. Either way, you and I would save our precious human life by putting away ahankara, egoism. So the seven mantras which I put in the category 2 are all about self-realization. The first one was Karma Yoga, the second one is Atmajnana. In fact, I should say, going by the comments that Adi Shankara makes in the beginning of his commentary on Bhagavad Gita, all Vedic wisdom is in these two camps. He calls them Pravritti Lakshanascha, Nivritti Lakshanascha, Dharmau. Dvivido hi Vedokto Dharmaha, Pravritti Lakshanascha, Nivritti Lakshanascha. He summarizes all the spiritual wisdom. The higher kind of spiritual wisdom is about putting aside our sense of being a limited individual and knowing our being pure consciousness which knows no bounds, or in the language of bhakti, knowing that we are with God. God is with us anytime, every time, anywhere, everywhere. That is Atmajnana. So we have the third mantra which condemns those people who do not aspire for this highest liberating self knowledge. Then you have the two mantras in this bunch of seven, and that is 4 and 5, which seems to make self contradictory statements, something that doesn't move but is faster than the mind. Anejadekam manaso javiyo. And even gods, or symbolically Indriyas, are not able to catch up with this supreme truth. What is that truth? That is the truth of pure consciousness. The second mantra in that pair says, it moves and yet it doesn't move. It's far and yet it is near. It's outside and yet it is inside. So anybody making a hasty reading of Ishavasya Upanishad would just close the book and say, I don't understand all this. This is of no practical importance. Is Vedanta practically unimportant? If anybody says, I think Vedanta is not practically useful, they are making a big mistake. It is like saying, ending sorrow, I don't think is of any practical use. Oh my God, every breath you and I are struggling to put an end to sorrow. And Vedanta essentially is about putting an end for good to sorrow. So never feel, never say Vedanta is not practical. A whole lot of memorizing concepts and whole lot of learning various ideas may not serve you in any way. But if you are able to arrive at the essential insight of Vedanta, where there is the Vedanta insight, there can be no sorrow at all. तदेजति तन्नैजति तद्दूरे तद्वन्तिके तदन्तरस्य सर्वस्य तदु सर्वस्यास्य बाह्यतः and so on. And then there are two mantras, 6 and 7, which also are very poetic, very mystical. One who sees all in oneself and one who sees oneself in all is free of any botheration, any fear. One who looks at all as existing in oneself and one who considers oneself as existing in all living beings. Tasya ko mohaha kashokaha. What delusion can there be to someone who has this vision where everything is one? There are no others in that exalted vision of the liberated one. They asked Ramana Maharshi once, will somebody after enlightenment serve others or sit quietly in a corner enjoying his own or her own enlightenment? Maharshi's reply was out of box. He said, after enlightenment, there are no others. There is such a fundamental change in perception. Therefore, this question, will she serve others or will she sit quietly on a rock or something, is an absurd question. It shows one has not understood what self-realization is. But then there are people who say, don't talk too philosophically. Give us a practical answer. After enlightenment, suppose our daughter gets enlightened, will she sit quietly or will she serve the society? Well, once more we would say that question can arise out of ignorance of what self-realization is, but yet you want answer in the same language you have asked, we would say it makes no difference. Even if she goes all over the world and tries to help people who are suffering, or even if she just sits at a place, she will be blessing the world. In her very presence, wondrous things happen. Therefore, the external forms of rendering help here, offering service there, loses significance when one digs deeper into the mysteries of existence. We underestimate our own deeper levels of existence. We judge others, we judge ourselves in gross terms all the time. But what the personality of you and I is only a tip of the iceberg. Even now, you and I are much more than our personality sends out a certain message. Personality is a limited affair. Thus, ho mohaha kashokaha. Where can there be any confusion of any kind? Where can there be any sorrow of any kind? And then one last mantra, or I must say, the eighth mantra also talks about that highest Brahma Vidya. And the eighth mantra talks about Brahman, Saparyagat. It is all pervasive and it is bright, effulgent. Being pure consciousness, it is of course radiant and it has no sin, it's ever pure, apapavit or rather apapavidham, not pierced by sorrow, not touched by sorrow, not touched by sin, and shuddham, apapavidham, not touched by sin, shuddham, pure. And it is that supreme truth which is the reality of our existence, but in the apparent pluralistic state of affairs, it is that truth which also acts as Ishvara, Karma, Dhyaksha. It is said in the last line of that eighth mantra, Shashwatibhyaha Samabhyaha Vyadadat Arthan, which through interpretation boils down to gives results of karmas to all of us. That completes the second group. Then the third group is a set of three mantras 9, 10, and 11. And these 9, 10, and 11 actually talk about the place of karma, place of upasana, and the place of both of them being carried in a very balanced manner. Karma is precious and upasana also is precious. But if someone is stuck in one, that's not desirable. We must do both karma and upasana. For simplicity, we may say in the Vedika context, there are Vedika or spiritual activities and spiritual mental practices. That would be Vedika karma and Vedika upasana. In a simpler way, even in the Laukika context, if we are doing good actions more physically, social work or charity begins at home. At our own home, we are ever ready to help family members, and mostly it is on the physical level, on the level of food, shelter, and such things. That would be karma. Upasana is on the mental level, having noble thoughts or even noble words. So once it is expressed in a subtler fashion, good activities, good initiatives, but in subtler fashion. Somebody, let us say, runs a website and nobody knows who is running that website. But whoever she is putting a lot of noble thoughts every day. And people are reading, people are getting new inspiration, people are getting new hope. But everybody wonders who is running this website, who is changing the content. Now, that person is not visible, but the ideas and thoughts and prayers and wishes and greetings that she shares on that website are serving humanity. That is a upasana of a modern kind. So, upasana is a subtler form of good work. Karma is a grosser form of good work. And the bunch of three, that is 9, 10, and 11, actually say that if someone can be active on both fronts, that will take one to an even higher level. Not liberation, technically, but a higher level of spiritual growth. As the 11th mantra says, Vidyancha avidyancha yas tadveda ubhayagam saha. Vidya is upasana, avidya here is karma. That is the terminology there. That person, avidyaya mrityum tirtva, vidyaya amritam ashnute. One reaches a almost immortal state, amritam, having first crossed the usual forms of death. All these are poetic expressions. Death need not be clinical death here. When you and I every now and then feel insulted, our heart sinks, we feel terrible. That is a kind of death. And when we have done a lot of karma and upasana, there is an inner strength which helps us remain cheerful no matter what, and also takes us to a high state of consciousness while the whole world is marked by unhappiness, conflict, and so on. Those who have done karma and upasana together will be living peacefully and contributing, sometimes not noticed by anyone. The fourth bunch goes where not karma and upasana, but the part and the whole, or the unmanifest and the manifest, are discussed. Avyakta and Vyakta in one interpretation, and uh, the whole and part. Asambhuti is the whole, Sambhuti is the part. Asambhuti is the unmanifest, Sambhuti is the manifest. And the three mantras say everything has its own benefits. Any good work and any domain of service. Somebody is very good in his own town, he hardly goes out. That is like part. Somebody else is serving the whole country, let us say. That's like the whole, in a manner of saying. If somebody is serving a lot of people in his own town, it's great. Who says it's of no value? If somebody is serving the country but doesn't visit his own town much, even then he is going all over and doing good work. That is the whole, asambhuti. Sambhuti is the part. But now imagine someone with such dynamism, with such intelligence, with such vision, she carries both part and whole together. She takes time off to visit her own town and do a few good things, and then again shoots off in different directions, serves the whole country. Therefore, Sambhuti, the part, the small town, and Asambhuti, the whole nation. If somebody is able to serve both, hats off to that person, then it is said, Vinashena mrityum tirtva asambhutya amritam ashnute. Thus, some light is thrown on our engagements. If our engagements are of one kind, like karma, certain benefits come to us. Our engagements are more of the subtle nature. Sometimes poets like Rabindranath Tagore, they wrote poems in Malayalam and Telugu, Kannada and Gujarati, Punjabi and Hindi, everywhere. There have been poets, writers who just wrote, and their poems have inspired numerous people. So that is like an upasana. Therefore, I call these as varieties of engagements. And the Ishavasya talks about the value of different kinds of noble engagements. So, Sambhuti, Asambhuti. Incidentally, Sambhuti is also called Vinasha. This it requires some grammar, how Vinasha can mean Sambhuti, but we will not go into it in this bird's eye view of the Ishavasya Upanishad. Now we come to the last part, Group 5. And Group 5 has 4 mantras. And those 4 mantras are no other than the last 4 mantras of this Upanishad. Starting with a much quoted and very poetic verse, mantra number 15. O sun, your face is hidden by a gold lid. Hiranmayena patrena satyasya apihitam mukham. Pushan, O sun, the face of truth. Here, Pushan is the truth too. So, your face or the face of truth is covered with a gold lid. When you and I get involved in some kind of so called noble activity and get attached to it, and in the process, being attached to noble work, if we do not inquire into the ultimate question, then that noble work, without denying all the good that is happening through it, all the same is a hurdle on the path to liberation. Therefore, it is no ordinary lid, it is gold lid, Hiranmaya Patra. Someone is attached to Sanskrit scholarship, somebody is attached to Ayurveda, using which he is curing many people. Somebody else is attached to homeopathy. Somebody else is such a gifted speaker and writer, goes around and cheers up thousands of people. Upanishad says that is all gold lid. The speaker and the singer and the Ayurvedic lady or the homeopathic doctor, all of them gifted in various ways and using their talents for the good of the society, need to be asked a question. All this is excellent, but have you dropped your ego? Have you let go of your sense of, haha, I have reached somewhere, I have become somebody? If there is even a tiny amount of a certain patting on one's own back, then the rigorous wisdom of Upanishad says it's a gold lid. You need to let go of any description of who you are. The salt doll has to completely dissolve in the ocean. That is when it knows the vastness of the ocean. You know the parable of Sri Ramakrishna. The salt doll wanted to gauge the depth of the ocean and it was going down, further down, and wondering how much more depth. And then at a certain point, the salt doll dissolves in the ocean. There is no salt doll to come back and report how deep the ocean was. That kind of where the I is gone. Though in third party's eyes, the enlightened person is doing. But she herself, the enlightened lady, is always aware of her true nature. No more will she make the mistake of looking at herself as somebody rising or falling, growing or getting weak, subject to death, etc. What dies is the body, and she does not identify with the body. Then the gold lid is removed. So the other mantras also, Pushan, Ekarshe, oh sun. Sun here is God only. God, please remove the blinding rays of yours so that I can see you as you are. Rashmin, Samuha, Vyuha rather, Vyuha, take away. Vyuha Rashmin, Samuha Tejaha, Tava Kalyanatamam Rupam Aham Pashyami. I would like to see the most auspicious form of yours, not some second level manifestation. And my teachers tell me I am one with that ultimate form. Sohamasmi. There is a Mahavakya in this Ishavasya Upanishad. Sohamasmi. Saha Aham. And the 17th mantra is a prayer. All these four are prayers. Therefore, I have bunched them as the fifth group. Let this body merge with the five elements, says the 17th mantra. Yesterday, I watched a 11 minutes video which was fascinating. Sadguru Jaggi Vasudev talking about his wife, and I did not know that before. In that video, he says, his wife, though was pretty young only, having a 6-year-old daughter, somehow decided to end her physical existence. So she does a certain yogic practice and ends her life. Something like what we call Ichha Marani. One dies when one wants to die. Some mystery it is. I'm not saying she got enlightened, etc. I don't know. But sometimes you and I, who generally are very attached to life, like a Swamiji joked once, a man was dying and the doctors say you are not going to live for even another 10 minutes. Do you have a last wish? The man said, I do have a wish. And when the doctors and family members asked him, all right, what is that last wish? We will try to fulfill that. The man says, even as the doctor was also very eager to hear what the man is going to say, the man says, my last wish is to see another doctor. I don't like this doctor who is saying I will die in 10 minutes. So you and I are generally very attached to life. But like what happened to the lady who was wife of Sadguru Jaggi Vasudev, who knows, you and I also could come upon a state of mind. And the 17th mantra seems to say something like that. May this body merge with the five elements. I just wish to remember, in essence, the way my life went on. Oh, mind, remember the good you did, remember the bad you did, and reconcile. Reconcile with all of them. Have no conflict. Don't fight with. Your life is fine. Whatever happened has happened. Live now the last few moments in peace. As you are ready to leave this body, do so in peace, not in complaining mood. That seems to be the implication. Honestly, I don't know all the implications of these mantras, but that kind of implication seems to emanate from this particular mantra where the person who is praying is preparing to leave. And as he is further confirming, I am leaving this particular bodily existence. Agni. Again, Agni, which otherwise means fire, here implies the Supreme God. O Supreme God, lead me by the noble path. May this soul of mine travel on and Bhuishtam te Namauktim Vidhema. The person praying uses plural. That plural is just like a manner of saying, but otherwise the devotee says, I bow down and bhuishtam namah, not just a little of salutation. Bhuishta means plenty, or it is in the spirit of, with all my heart, I bow down and praise you and I'm happy. I have no complaint about anything. Let me go now to the higher region. Bless me, O Lord. So, some of these prayers are indeed mystical. They may have great amount of implication, seeking liberation maybe, or not even seeking liberation. Who cares? I want to now say, I am at peace with my life. I am at peace with my death. A statement from the German philosopher comes to my mind. Uh, Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer of Germany, some 200 or more years ago, was so deeply touched by Upanishads. And this professor Schopenhauer said, Upanishads are the solace of my life. They are the solace of my death. I wonder whether this mantra inspired him to say that. In this way, friends, the 18 mantras of the Ishavasya Upanishad talk about the higher self knowledge of karma yoga, of managing or engaging with karma, upasana, and so on. And towards the end, some beautiful prayers with multiple possibilities of what the state of mind of this lady or gentleman praying like that could have been. It is up to anybody's guess, but on the whole, it touches us deeply. Ishavasya Upanishad, unless you count Mandukya Upanishad, is the shortest of all. Mandukya has only 12, but generally, because it is studied with the Karikas, it is a bulky affair. But Ishavasya is 18 mantras, crisp, but having a lot of its own suggestions. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.